Hi, this is Chris from Clever Unicorn Games and the Unicorn Collective, back with another interview with a games designer. Today we have Ian Brocklebank, coordinator of gamespeople.co.uk. Ian, how are you doing today?
I'm good. Yeah, pleased to be here, and enjoyed getting to know you over the past few days or so.
Oh, shucks. So tell us, Ian, tell everybody when you're not playing games, what is it that you like to do?
I'd like to think I'm reasonably active. Mountain biking, but not as often as I'd like. I still manage an annual big trip to Scotland. Running a little bit. I've started running again when I realised my son is getting faster and I seem to be getting less fit and slower. So I've started running to try and keep up with him. At the moment, we're doing a lot of walking. So during lockdown, we've been going out for long walks every weekend. So taking our allotted exercise as far as humanly possible from the rest of the population.
What would you say is your favorite board game?
It's hard to have a favorite. I like games which have where the interaction is with the other players at the table. So a cutthroat auction game or a share, stock market type game. Things like QE, fantastic games of QE at Essen. The Estates, I love. Modern Art, I really like. I like Acquire, and probably if I'm allowed to, stretch it a little bit. Blood Bowl would get an honourable mention. I think I would have to say Blood Bowl is my favourite game of all, even though it doesn't fit into any of the categories of the stuff I play more commonly.
No, I've been playing Blood Bowl since 1993, I think it was, and yeah, I'm a big fan of Blood Bowl as well.
Yeah.
When you come to designing a game, what kind of games inspire your work when you start with a game?
I suppose fun games, unusual games, games where I sort of do something or see something that I've not seen before in a game, something that I've never experienced. And if I like something, I'll think, how can I do that? Is there another way of doing that? Is there a way of changing it, getting the same experience, but doing it in a different way? For instance, playing Seven Wonders, I was marveling at the fact we've got a 7-player game with no downtime. And so one of the games I've started working on is how can I do that? How can I have 8 players playing a game and everyone playing all at once and maintain, and have simultaneous play without that downtime?
When you come up with one of your game designs, where do you start? What do you start with?
I think I usually start with what I think is a cool idea. So I have a cool idea, at least I think it is. Sometimes it's a mechanic, but it's usually theme or even just the feeling. So, for instance, watching the TV show Homeland, I was thinking about what it must be like trying to tell the difference between good intel and bad intel, and thinking about a hidden information game and what it would be like if the information you've got, although you've found out the information, you don't know whether it was information that was good. And the other player doesn't know whether you've seen the information that they're trying to keep hidden. So that's really just an idea at the moment, but it's the sort of thing that I think, how could I do that in a game? What sort of mechanics would you need to produce that feeling and that sense of of not knowing?
No,
Or
that's a really
throwing a
interesting idea, yeah.
yeah, or throwing a handful of dice on a hex grid and then thinking about what does it look like if what would herding dice look like? Um, I think the problem I have is usually that the idea I'm most interested in is the idea I had a week ago. And once the idea is solved in my head and I've got a playable idea, I'm never convinced or sure that that's the idea that I should be really working on and developing all the way through to fruition. And so sometimes I produce sell sheets of games that are really just an idea on the basis that the sell sheet will never be better than my dream. And then if people sort of validate the sell sheet and say, yeah, actually, that does sound interesting, it does sound like a game I'd want to play, then I'll invest some time and effort into developing it. I had an
That
interesting discussion with, sorry, I've interrupted you. I had a discussion with Martin Wallace, who completely disagreed with that approach. But other people have said that actually they understand why I would do it that way.
No, to be honest, I was going to say that sounds like a really good way to work. You get your idea, you write your idea down in an attractive enough way that you can then display it for people, and then they can look at it and say, "Oh, well, yeah, that's interesting or not," and then you won't move from there once you know. That sounds like a really good method.
Yeah, I mean, I think Martin Wallace was trying to say to me, just take it and do it. Don't ask for that validation. Just create a game, make a bad game, which I think is legitimate as well. But my problem is I've got a stack of bad games to choose from, so I need to know which bad game I should work on.
So, I don't know whether you have or not, but have you ever had an experience of taking a game from the Notepad 2 market?
No. Obviously, I've pitched. I've had some moderately successful pitches, I think. So far, nothing's come of them. I decided two things a while back. One is that I don't really want to run another business, so I don't really want to be a sort of solo guy in a running a small publishing company. And then the other thing is, I recognise that everybody thinks their baby is the cutest, and I'm if a game I design is good enough, I'm more confident in my ability to pitch it successfully than I am to know whether it's actually a game worth publishing. And so I sort of trust publishers. Yeah, I think I can successfully pitch a game if it's good. And so that's my preferred approach. Make someone else take the risks.
Have you ever played a game that you didn't like? You'd have to name the game, but have you ever played one that you really didn't like, and what were the
Oh,
mechanics that put you off the game?
so much so. There's a game I absolutely hated, and it's the game I give to anyone, the example I give to anyone before I give harsh feedback on a playtest. Because I playtested this game before it was published, and I literally gave it 1 out of 10 for fun. Every encounter, every card that we turned played out exactly the same way. The game was rolling more dice than I was. So basically, when I rolled for the game, or when the other players at the table were rolling for the game, they had a handful of dice and I had a single dice to roll, which is never fun. And there was an immense amount of bookkeeping. I absolutely hated it. The same game went on to have an immensely successful Kickstarter, and I played the game. A friend backed the Kickstarter, and I played it, and I still hated it. But there was a stack of them for sale at Aircon a year ago, and maybe a year and a couple of months ago. And I heard that at one point it was the game that Traveling Man was selling more of than any other. So, from any feedback I ever give you on any playtest, I will always count. I will always qualify it with the fact that what do I know?
That's as we said in another interview there with Patrick. It's one of those that you just can't please everybody, and you're not going to like every game. But then a game that you like, somebody else might not like really. So it's just one of
Yeah,
those things. You just can't please everybody all the time.
I still think it was an awful game. I think it was. I think it is deeply flawed, but it hit its target market and carried with it. That's what sold it to people. I think there was a nostalgia element to it, and it just recreated those feelings that people had and what people wanted to play it and backed it because of that.
What are you working on right now?
Um, well, one of the things is growing the Games People. So the gamespeople.co.uk is really intended to be a portal for UK-based designers. So what I'd like to see is, I mean, I've got a page with some of the published games, or not published, some of the pitchable games that I have ready, and then also a page full of those sell sheets of ideas. David Digby, who I know you've interviewed, he's got some of his games up there, and I'd welcome any designers to get in touch, because what I think is that we are collectively are more likely to see publishers approach us and look at our games if they're all in one convenient place. And so that was the idea behind starting the Games People. I'm also working on a sheep herding game, not at all inspired by my border collie, but it grew out of seeing a handful of dice on a hex map and thinking, how could we drive those dice around and what would that look like? So I've got that into Tabletop Simulator. And then I'm also trying to get another game into Tabletop Simulator called Ascendancy. Well, provisionally called Ascendancy, which is a trick-taking game which plays out with 8 players, and so each player plays against a different person at the table sort of simultaneously, so that, and I actually think Tabletop Simulator would work really well for that, because it's very easy to have a very confined area of the table within your view and completely ignore what's going on elsewhere around the table. So I actually think it's one of those games that, you know, almost playing on Tabletop Simulator could work better than playing in real life, which is one of the things in my head I've got to try and work out how to get over.
Why is it that you make games? What is it that drives your want to create these games?
Um, there's a quote on the Games People website, which is, I think, Christopher Hitchens, and he says everyone has a book in them, but in most cases that's where it should stay. And I think pretty much anyone who's played a lot of board games has got ideas. They've got ideas and they think, oh, wouldn't it be cool if I'd love to play a game about this, or wouldn't that make a great game? And I'm just one of the people who's convinced that my ideas are so cool they deserve to actually see the light of day.
What is one piece of advice that you would give a newbie designer who's thinking, I've got this game in my head and I want to start creating it? What piece of advice would you give to that person?
First of all, get onto Tabletop Simulator. I wrote a blog post about how the pros and cons, but it's just so much easier to play test. I can play test every night of the week if I really wanted to. I've joined a group from the States. So I'm playing it, you know, I start at 10 o'clock at night and play into the wee small hours with a group of playtest designers in the States. I would say don't be put off by the impressive artwork of other people's Tabletop Simulator prototypes. Some of them are amazing. Some of them are production ready. They're not really playtesting at that point. They're really just developing and trying to make their game, you know, just that little bit better. And then also, Jay Cormier wrote produced a playtest journal called the Fail Faster Journal. That's great advice. Fail faster. Get a playtest. Get the minimal viable product of a game and get it on the table, and very quickly know whether you've got a game at all. One of my playtests was the first thing I did with this card game I was trying to develop was I started with a hand of 13 cards with 2 suits on each card, held them up, and that point the playtest finished because we said too many cards.
Well, that was great, Ian. Thank you very much for coming and speaking to me today.
I enjoyed it. I don't know whether I enjoyed that or not. It was a little bit nerve-wracking at first, but I think I got into it, and I hope it will be of interest to someone somewhere.
I guarantee you there's a lot of interesting material in there.